Fans are boring. Not you guys, but like computer fans and stuff. It's like, it's some motor thing that turns and has blades and makes air move through your system. But you know what sucks about fans is when there's tons of wires and clutter and crap, and with the invention of RGB and ARGB, it's just become a complete mess. But now that we have more and more brands getting on board with the whole daisy chain interconnectable fans, we're gonna take a look at Cougar's, what are these called? The Apolar 120 ARGBs in white. This actually came with the case that we reviewed recently for their FP270 or FV270 case, but I went, these are unique. I've never looked at them, so I want to do a separate video. So let's see if these are even worth considering wasting your money or time for. For those looking for a high-end custom gaming experience, look no further than Falcon Northwest. Falcon Northwest has been building PCs made for gamers for over 30 years with a focus on a true high-end gaming experience. Custom cases available only through Falcon Northwest feature state-of-the-art testing and design to ensure that every component is performing at their best through thermal imaging and rigorous lab testing designed and overseen by the Falcon Northwest founder himself. With a complete lineup of systems ranging from small to large, every Falcon Northwest system includes a 3-year warranty policy and a year of 2-way overnight shipping coverage, providing the ultimate peace of mind. To see all that Falcon Northwest has to offer, follow the sponsored link in the description below. So like I said, these were sent over by Cougar, but they were just, like, if we were gonna do a build in their FV270, then they wanted us to have fans to put in there. So there's no, like, this isn't really sponsored, like they didn't give any talking points or anything. So we're gonna go through this together. First and foremost, this is a 3-pack. I don't know if you can get them in individual pack, but these are a 3-pack. The price is actually pretty reasonable for a 3-pack. It's $69.99. Yes, that's a lot for fans. I mean, we're talking like about $22.50 or $23.33 a fan, okay? Which in today's market is not insane. And considering the fact that they're ARGB and interconnectable, which means that we should have one fan cable and one ARGB cable, means that it should be fairly clutter-free and convenient. If you take a look at like how much like Lee & Lee Unifans are and stuff, they can become extremely expensive. So what comes in the box? It does look like it might have a controller. Okay, well, so much for the whole less wires thing. I don't know, I guess we'll see. What is up with this? Is like rubber anti-vibration pad thing? Okay, yeah, so it is less wires. So technically, okay, so one of these connect to the end of the fan, and it's got one RGB, or one fan PWM and one RGB. There's 3 of them because there's 3 fans. So you can daisy chain them, or if you need them in 3 separate places, they do work independently. Not entirely sure what these rubber pads are for, but I guess we'll find that out in a sec. Maybe they're just to help with anti-vibration. We do get pass-through fan or screws, both what looks like they're probably gonna be 30 mil and maybe 35 mil or whatever the length are. This is if you're gonna mount them to radiators and stuff, I guess, or depending on maybe some of their screw holes in their case use particular threads, I don't know, because you also get these self-tapping screws that you normally get as you screw into a fan, like through a case or whatever. And then that's it. So no controller, which to me is nice because that's less wiring. And most motherboards these days have everything you need on board to be able to light up your fans and such. The only thing you need to keep in mind now is you don't want to overload your header by going too many LEDs. How many LEDs you can go is gonna be dependent on your motherboard. The header should have information on the motherboard, like manual, on which ARGB headers can support X amount of lights. Anyway, here's the manual. What I'm looking forward to here is finding out what its static pressure and stuff is. So it's a 28 mil fan, so it's already fatter than the standard 25. It's actually really nice looking. They do have a little bit of orange accents in there, which you can only see from the side. That's because Cougar likes to put their color on there. The fans also have, like on the blades, you can see on the outside, they have some dimple or like rippling on there, which is supposed to help smooth out some of the airflow on the most turbulent part of the blade. The wires are fully contained inside the hub, so that's really nice to see. And then you can see we do have pogo contact pins on one side, and then we have the contacts on the other side, and this is for when they daisy chain together. But even the corners that are held on with like these really nice looking stainless screws. So you can see we're getting what feels like a very heavy duty fan for not as expensive as you might think. Look, back in the day, like an SP or static pressure 120 fan from Corsair with no lighting or anything on it and just the snappable rings you could change for colors was like 25 bucks for that fan. But in terms of the specs, at least what it says on the paper, and again, I wish I had the ability to hook this up to a machine and test their specs. I can't, so I can only tell you what they have written down on here. It's got an RPM range of 600 to 2200 RPM, plus or minus 200 RPM. So at least, you're getting at least 2000 RPM out of it, which is good. Airflow, plus or minus 10%, 75.38 CFM. That's gonna be at its max RPM. So that's gonna be at the 2200, right? So as you slow it down, that'll go down obviously. 2.59 millimeters of H2O, again, plus or minus 10%. So this blade pitch design and gap means it's gonna be a pretty good universal fan for both airflow as well as static pressure on radiators and AIOs and such. Manufacturers these days have to kind of decide what blade they're gonna go with. If they go with tons of skinny blades on there that have gaps between them, it's really good for airflow because it can pick up a lot of air and push it. The problem is those gaps give splashback or back pressure a place for the air to escape, which means that they're not great for radiators. As such, if you make blades that overlap, so instead of there being a gap between the blades, they actually overlap, you get better static pressure, but not as good of an open environment airflow. So those are really good for going through like radiators and heat sinks and lots of maybe air filters and stuff. But this, as you can see, is sort of like the middle ground. You've got some gap. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blades, which is typical. I'm assuming that these are gonna probably perform pretty well in both scenarios. But again, I don't have the measurement tools to do that. 37.1 dBA dB at max. So that's 37.1 decibels at 2200 RPM. That's basically the best case scenario with no resistance. You add resistance to this, that number goes up. So people need to remember that. If you put it on AIOs and heat sinks and stuff, that volume goes up. Okay, let's see how these connect together. So I'm assuming I'm gonna take the pogo pin side, line it up with the contact side, and they should be magnetic. No. Oh wait, it's got these little retractable clips that are gonna hold them together. That could be because patent reasons. I think there are patents out there that fan manufacturers hold about magnetically being held together, so this might be a little workaround with that. So that should just snap in very tightly. They're not going anywhere, so how about undoing them? Okay, so as long as those don't break, we should be good. Fair amount of force to actually close those. Ugh. Okay, so there's 3 of them put together right there. They're pretty rigid. You can see there's a little bit of a bow on them, but man, they really do mate up pretty flush, which is nice because then that means there'll be less air kind of lost through that gap. And then you can take your end connector here, which is also gonna go on the pogo side. Same thing, you gotta pop these out. There. So now we have 3 fans connected that are simply using 1 ARGB wire and 1 fan header with what was 490 millimeters of length as well for these cables, which is kind of nice because some brands like to just go too short on the cables. So there's what that looks like. That, as you can see, is a much cleaner solution when it comes to installing things in your system than having 3 of these with 2 wires coming out and 6 wires for 3 fans, which kind of sucks. All right, let's get them over on the test bench. Let's listen to them. Let's see what the RGB looks like. The orange might be the one thing that holds you back because it's orange on the white and orange on the black. So unless you're going with white and orange or like a very Asimov kind of a look from like old CSGO, then this might be the one thing that holds you back. Okay, so here they are lit up. As you can see, they're daisy chained. Everything is, what I want to kind of point out though, is it does look like all 3 are sort of mimicking the behavior of the one next to it. So what I mean is like, it's not one continuous type of LED all the way across. So when you see the color shift, you can see we get purple to blue on all 3 equally. Whereas a lot of the other daisy chain type of fans, especially the Lee & Lees, will carry the color all the way across like it's a single strip. It's almost like when you plug them together, it then extends the amount of LEDs that are controlled through that unit. So it does really look like what's happening right now is these 3 are just now split amongst the 3. So now all 3 are doing the same effect individually rather than all 3 of them becoming one ARGB unit. So I want to point that out. That's one downside of it being, with the Lee & Lee stuff, it doesn't matter if you're just using their controller or you have it plugged into the motherboard. Once they're linked together, it extends the count of LEDs to make it one unit rather than 3 individual units. So that's already one downside to this RGB I wanted to point out. It's just on RGB rainbow mode right now using Aura. So for the record, I hate everything about Asus. We just haven't had a chance to change our motherboard setup here on our test bench. And when you run everything on a certain platform and you change it, you kind of have to redo a lot of tests and stuff. So that sucks. But look, it's It doesn't even see its own headers on the motherboard. Okay, well, I was gonna demonstrate some of the RGB for you. I got an inline controller coming. It's actually gonna be delivered today, so I can finally start getting rid of this crap when it comes to doing our tests. Let's talk about the fans. So I'm using fan control to control them right now. Right now they're at their minimum starting RPM, which is 600 RPM. So it's running about 605 RPM right now, which is 24% on that particular header's 100% power output. So 24% on this chassis 1 or chassis 2 header correlates to its minimum RPM. If I grab this and kind of listen, let's see if we can hear any motor noise. There is zero noise coming out of these. These are not, so here's the reason why I'm checking this. A lot of fans, when you put them at their lowest RPM that they could possibly run, if I go down like 1 more percent, it'll start to like, the RPM signal starts to drop off. It'll show like 580 to 570 RPM, but then it disappears, which tells it it's a little bit too below its voltage. But you get motor buzzing or humming at a low RPM. We are not getting that at all. Now on the air side, it's moving air. There's 3 of them in an open environment, but there's no buzzing. I assume putting that up to my microphone, can you hear anything? Okay, let's now bump this up to say, I don't know, 1,000 RPM. By the way, I do have a whole video on how to use this piece of free software if you want. It's pretty awesome. It's better than anything ASUS would ever be able to develop in a million years. That's 1,000 RPM right there. Jeez, like, and that's not motor noise, that's blade noise. That's just the sound of the blades picking up air. Pretty decent amount of airflow too coming out of there. All right, well, let's go to like 70% then. Let's start to really push it, because now remember, these are up to 2,200 RPM. So again, all you hear, that's the sound of the blades. That's not the motor. So the motor's making no noise. And it didn't mention what kind of bearing it is, which kind of stinks. I'm gonna have to check the manual again, but I'm wondering now if it's a sleeve bearing, fluid dynamic bearing. I'd be surprised if for the price if they were ball bearing, but the smoothness of them has me wondering now if they're ball bearing. Yeah, that's just the fan. Okay, let's go for broke. Let's go to 100%. That was 1,500 RPM. I don't think, honestly, I don't think you'd really need to push more than 1,500 RPM with this. Like if I had this pointing up right now, or even sideways, and I was to push my smoke machine at it, you would see this get shot like 10 feet away. There is so much airflow happening. Pretty decent amount of illumination too. All right, 100%, here we go. I mean, you're gonna hear 2,200 RPM, right? It's like air conditioning. For the cost, it's really hard to argue with like the quality of these fans. And the nice thing is once they're in the system, they're lit up and you have lighting going, those orange spacers, if you will, for the little plastic ends here, don't really stand out so much. But again, it's unfortunate that they put the orange in there because I really do feel like the orange might be the one thing that would keep someone from buying these. It's a little less obvious against the white than I think they would be against the black, but as soon as you add color to this, they really sort of disappears into the color. Unless you go with a solid color, then it might show up a little more, especially if you do white, if you do like white RGB. I'd love to show you white right now, but I can't. I could probably install open RGB, but you know what? I'm not gonna go through that effort. I'd rather spend the effort to get rid of all the ASUS crap that's in here. Let's do this though. I wanna check and see if I can figure out what kind of bearing this is real quick. Okay, so I just confirmed on their website, they call it a hydrodynamic bearing, fluid dynamic. Hydro just means it's hydraulic or fluid of some sort, so oil. So it's basically being suspended by oil all around it. The downside with those is that they can tend to clog up with dust. I also find fluid dynamic bearing is the cheapest bearing that people tend to run. Then after that, it would be like a sleeve bearing, and then after sleeve bearing, it would be like a ball bearing. So, or maglev, magnetic bearing. But I guess we just have to see over time. I think a lot of fans these days are running a fluid dynamic bearing. So as long as they're nicely sealed and the oil can't puke out, it shouldn't, one, start rattling around because the oil is no longer helping it be suspended. And two, dust shouldn't get in there. But there's a lot of air going through this, and any dust that gets through the filters is going to make its way into the fans as well. So we just have to hope that that's not a problem with these. Also, we did verify using our ASRock board that the fans are independently split from each other, meaning it's not just one continuous RGB all the way around, which is a downside. But you know what? I don't think it's a huge, personally, I don't think that's a deal breaker for the price, because there's still $69 for a 3-pack. And I know that sounds like a lot, but if you really go out and shop, like a lot of brands with ARGB fans, especially daisy chainable ones, you'll find ones that can cost in excess of $100 for a set of 3. So they are available individually as well. And then, again, Aura's being stupid. In fact, we think it might have even hurt the RAM on this system now. Look at the RGBs doing on this. So it's just, thanks, Asus. Let's just add this to another pile of shit that you are. Anyway, there you go. These are the Apolar RGB 120mm fans. I couldn't see on their website if they have a 140. I hope they do. They also have a black version as well. And I just thought they'd be interesting to take a look at because of the fact that I think now, as a fan manufacturer, be quiet, I'm talking to you on this one, if you don't get behind the interconnectability of fans, you're gonna get left behind. Because this is what you're really, truly paying for right here, is one cable for RGB and one cable for fan, like the fan PWM. Even if you built these, hey, be quiet. Again, I'm talking to you. If you built like your Silent Wings, but made them interconnectable with no RGB and just had a single fan header coming off of that, that would be huge, because right now you can only get interconnecting fans in RGB. The audience is hungry for non-RGB stuff. So anyone listening right now, do yourself a favor. Make an interconnectable fan that has a single fan header coming off of it and no RGB, and I bet you would sell a ton of those. All right, we're gonna get out of here. Tell me what you guys think about these. Do you think 70 bucks is too much? Do you think it's just right? Do you think it's a good deal? I personally I'm leaning in that neutral towards good deal side, because I've seen how expensive fans can be, and I like the design. I like the busy look of it. It just doesn't look like another copy pasta fan with a plastic shroud that looks ugly. You have side lighting, you have hub lighting, you have interconnectability, you have replaceability too of some of the, like the end piece right here. Like if this were to get damaged, you have 2 other ones that come with the 3-pack. You wanna add another fan to it too, just click it on the end, it's good to go. As many as the RGBs can handle anyway, the fan headers can handle at least like 6 or 7 of these fans, no problem. All right, sound off down below how you guys feel about these. As always, we'll see you in the next one.